Those are fun.
Yeah, and we're going live now because Scotty just said that he likes the last night of the Transformers.
Hey, I was gonna say it's a good thing you got that confession out before we went live.
Well,
no, and I think part 3 was like my worst movie of that year or something. So I mean, I'm not a huge fan of that series, but
no.
Part 5, I was like, okay, like how much beating has my brain taken recently? Because I'm kind of enjoying this.
Well, it's funny with Bumblebee because Bumblebee, the first 10 minutes of Bumblebee, I know all my friends. We were like, this is all you had to give us, Michael. See this 10 minutes of Bumblebee? Give us a whole movie. Like, this is all you had to do. Because I had saw the clips on Bumblebee, on the opening. And suddenly when I watched the full movie, and that first opening is all on Cybertron and it's all G1, and it just when fucking Soundwave ejected Ravage, I'm just like, I'm just sitting there squealing like a 10-year-old kid again, going, oh my God, it's Ravage. It looks like Ravage. It looks like a tape deck. Oh my God, this is what I want.
Michael Bay is what happens when you leave James Cameron in a hot car too long.
Nailed it.
Because he's big, he's bold, he can tell you all these great things. Like, great. What does that mean? And then
and on that note, we're here actually not to talk about Bayformers. See, we lost someone already mentioning Bayformers.
Sorry.
That's okay. And we welcome everyone to the spoiler room. We are live here, and yes, we are kicking off our Space Sucks month here in the spoiler room. And I figured, do you know how hard it was to find space vampire films? I thought it'd be easy. I thought it would be like, this is going to be a cakewalk, space vampires, right? It isn't. That actual subgenre. So, folks, if you're going to make a movie, space vampires, because there's actually only a handful out there. Even on IMDb list, I'm reading the list going, this is a short list.
I don't even think they've taken the title yet, because Life Force, the original title, was Space Vampires, and somebody had the wise decision of saying, like, let's call it something classier. let's actually make a canon film that maybe people show up for, and they didn't. But
But yes, folks, you hear his dulcet tones. He's back with us, Baby Spice, after a long tour over in Europe, Antarctica, all over the galaxy. He is back with us to talk space vampires. It is none other than the one and only Mr. Scotty D. Scott, welcome back to the spoiler room, my friend.
I never screw around. To quote our movie today.
Yes, to quote the movie today. Well done. Well done. So glad to have you here. And yes, my right-hand man, the man who's taken a very long journey with me, and he just keeps coming back for more. It is none other than
like Bryan Adams in that regard. Baby, you're all that I want.
Okay. It just got a little warm in here. It's Mr. Ian Simmons. Hello, Ian. How are you?
I'm great, as long as you can keep both hands where I can see them.
Woo, they're right here.
What did you do with your glass? Hands and glands, I should say.
Hands and glands. There you go.
I'm doing great.
Good.
I'm really curious to talk about this movie, and wow. I mean, I know it's slim pickings, Mark, but Jesus Christ.
Oh, I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this one. So I can kind of suspect Scotty D's. So this is going to be an interesting conversation. And yes, we're talking not of this earth. Yeah, Angelique, he doesn't need hands anymore. Nope, I've got the table going at it. Yes, Angelique Bone is in the audience. So glad you could join us, Angelique. It was a pleasure to have you in the chat. And yeah, there we go. We'll put that up there. He doesn't need hands anymore. And it's right next to Tracy Lord's picture in the thumbnail too. So it's awkward. Not of this earth. 1988 does star Tracy Lords. It is directed from Jim Wow, I need more wine. Apparently, Winorski.
Winorski, yeah.
Wine Norski. There we go, 1988. And Scotty D, since it's been a while, give our fine audience members the synopsis of this cult space vampire film.
Tracy Lords is a nurse that works for a space vampire.
Okay.
And
you want me to go into greater detail? I can. Okay.
And Fiend. I mean, we'll talk about it. Give us a little more. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. It's a remake of a 1950s Roger Corman film. Tracy Lords, in her first legitimate role, takes the role that was originally played by Beverly Garland. The film is about a strange and very stoic businessman who is actually an alien from another world who is murdering people and siphoning their blood for his home planet that is undergoing lots of civil war, and we understand their blood problems, probably.
Blood problems.
And so she is the nurse assigned to this person to help with his blood transfusions, and of course not knowing that he's an alien. And starts investigating what's going on along with a hood of a chauffeur and her cop boyfriend, and they kind of unravel the intergalactic mystery. I like my first description better.
The more I talk about this film out loud, the more I start to question things.
I just want to take a minute to appreciate Scotty D's alternate title for this. Blood Problems. Much better title.
Oh, it's going to be a long night, folks. Okay. Ian, was this your first viewing and your initial feeling with the film?
Yeah, that was my first viewing. I don't know what to make of this movie. It's weird. I'd seen like the poster and the video box, I guess, going back forever, with the beautiful Tracy Lords on it. And, I had a familiarity with her career. And, during the pre-show, we were talking a little bit about that, her kind of sordid past as an underage performer in very much overage films. And, I certainly know her from like later stuff like Zack and Miri Make a Porno, which was, really fun. So I didn't really have any sense of her as an actress, especially at this stage of her career. And I thought she did really well. I was almost, there were scenes where I thought, you are far better than the material that you're being, not forced to do, but that you've signed on to. It's a strange film, and it feels like it's calling back to that kind of 1950s, 1960s monster movie aesthetic, especially with the space vampires psychically controlling people, and you can hear that echoey voice, you will do this, you won't do that. But then it gets into this really bizarre, it's got kind of a tongue-in-cheek feel to it. It's partially a comedy, partially a sci-fi, but then there's a chase scene towards the end where the space vampire is stalking a woman, like going through a park or something. And it's like something out of a straight up Giallo movie at some point. Cause I watched this movie on YouTube. Yes, I'm sorry, but I did. And I thought I was being punked. I thought someone spliced part of a different movie into this because it goes from like, cheeky sex stuff to like straight up like visceral, horrible murder. I'm like, what am I watching?
Funny thing you say that about splicing movies into this. We'll get to it in just a minute.
Well, I want to ask you about that opening.
Oh, not just the opening. But
I'm not talking about Tracy Lords.
No,
but sorry.
We've got a comment from Angelique who says she's got 99 problems, but some blood ain't one. And we are even.
Oh my God, Don!
Mr. Don Shanahan is in the house tonight as well. Oh wow!
Hello, sir.
We got all kinds of royalty going on in the spoiler room tonight. But the opening has at least, and I didn't pull up the trivia yet on IMDb. I fail, sorry, but just me recognizing the opening. And Scotty D, you can help fill in the blanks probably because you are a warehouse of knowledge. just me. It's been years since I watched this. I haven't watched this in ages. I mean, like many years. But just watching the opening, I'm going, hey, that's Battle Beyond the Stars. Hey, that's that's Humanoids of the Deep. Hey, that's Galaxy of Terror.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like 2 other movies too.
And they also threw in, and this is like for the pre-credits and also the credits, and they threw in Forbidden World, and a little shot from Piranha.
Yep.
And I think Battle Beyond the Sun was the thing with the alien creatures in it.
Yeah, that might have been. That might have been, but
it was it was whatever the thing that Francis Ford Coppola shot.
Right.
For so technically Francis Ford Coppola shot part of this movie. Technically we open up with James Cameron's special effects.
Yes. Ooh.
Now, so this is great because I'm ashamed to admit that all the movies you guys just referenced, I have not seen, and there's a lot of blind spots in there. So when I was watching it, I thought they were doing the 1970s TV thing where they would have like a TV show and they would show clips from the show you were about to watch with the opening credits. So you have something to look forward to. And then by the time the movie ended, I'm like, wait a second, what happened to all the space and the monsters and the running naked women?
Oh, what's great about that is the fact that at first I was watching going, okay, they're doing that type of credit. I was like you, because it's like I said, I didn't remember much of the movie, but then I'm watching the one scene. I'm like, hey, that's Humanoids from the Deep. I know that because we just did an episode on that movie a few months.
That's right. That's the one. That's the one that I'd seen out of that whole thing.
Yeah. Because I'm like, oh my God. And then after and they used one shot. I'm like, okay, they used one scene. And then they used another scene. And then they used another scene in the freeze frame. We're like, oh my God. And later on, folks, because we're going to jump around on this film, they use a whole sequence from Humanoids from the Deep in this movie.
Well, they use 2. They use one whole sequence from Humanoids from the Deep. Mm-hmm. And I think the one that you were talking about, saying like it feels like it's from a different movie, was an entire sequence from Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah. Yep.
And that was made to look like a Mario Bava film. So it was Joe Dante and Alan Arkush aping Mario Bava in a film ostensibly directed by Jim Wynorski.
I gotta track that down because it's strange, but it makes a lot of sense now that you guys are mentioning it. But I guess I just question the wisdom of including that. I understand. Well, we've got this footage and we've got something involving murders sort of in the plot, but let's just throw that in here.
Yeah, and the Humanoids from the Deep scene is the one with the girl in the red lingerie where we're doing the POV shot.
That's right.
Through the window. It's funny because I'm watching this. I'm like, okay. And the minute they do the POV shot, I'm like, oh, this is from Humanoids. I'm like, how much are they going to use? Because, well, even before that, the dog, the dog going through the woods. I'm like, that dog looks familiar. This woods seems familiar. That actress seems familiar. They're not from this movie.
Not of this movie. That's
they got everybody, and they were just going to use it. And he says, "Okay, I'm going to need to get the actress back for like one reaction shot." And I guess that he called, and she said, "No way." She had retired from acting. She didn't want anything to do with it anymore. And so he got an actress who looked like her to do the reaction shot. Like just one shot. And that actress was Kim Dawson, who would go on to become a major star of exploitation and erotic thrillers in the 90s. So
you guys, you know what? You're making me want to go back and watch this movie again. Damn it.
It's a fascinating as far as cult films go, it's just got this fascinating stories around it more so than the film itself. Because you're right. I mean, you look at the film itself, it's a pretty straightforward film. Even when they're trying to get into the sci-fi stuff, you're like, it's shot on a minimal budget. I think when Wynorski was challenged to shoot this in 12 days, he shot it in 11 and a half. Mm-hmm. by Corman. by Corman, I believe. So he did shoot it, and that explains the use of the other footage. Because
the movie was a bet. It was a bet so he could get a car. No, I'm serious.
Yeah,
he made a bet with Jim Wynorski made a bet with Roger Corman, because Roger Corman made and the Hollywood Boulevard was made similar ways, like about like 15 years prior to that. But Jim Wynorski made a bet with Roger Corman, like, let's redo one of your old movies. He says, I'll bet you I can make it as quickly. And Roger's like, no, you can't make them as quick as I used to anymore. Like, no, I'll bet you I can. They were going to do Attack of the Crab Monsters. And he says, there's okay, no that way, one actually is way too hard to do those crab effects today. No. And so, we'll do Not of This Earth, because, I mean, the monster is a guy in a suit. And he said, and Roger's there's like, okay, if you can do the movie in 12 days for $350,000, then you have a special car. But this time I would like more nudity, and it needs to be special. And then he fucked off to Europe. Jim was left was like, okay, how do I make this special? How do I make this special? And then he sees an article in the newspaper about Tracy Lords and like everything that had just gone down. And he says, well, there's the girl that we need for the lead. Oh my God. Yes, perfect. And he actually had to like go through all these channels and find her, because she was in hiding. Because, this was a scary time for her. Everybody, the press was hounding her, former colleagues were being arrested. It was a mess. And, still no one knows the story behind that, and so he all of a sudden, but he finds her, and he, they done, and he says like, look, this is the type of movie I do. And she agrees to do it. And that's how they got to do this. But yeah, it was a bet. It was supposed to be made in 12 days for $350,000. And he made it in 10 and a half days and had an extra day, which he used to reshoot a lot of the first day, because Tracy was so nervous, in her first legit role, that he said that she was a bit stiff. And so like, he says, like, the stuff we shot, for the pickups was much better. Like, it's like the shots of some of the shots of her in the office, but also like her like at the phone booth at the end crying to the cop and everything like that. That was like on, so like, yeah, she did a good job. And but yeah, all of it started with a bet, which he won.
Now, what car did he win?
He won, I think. Okay, he had a Camaro. What's the other big C one? Not a Corvette. Cadillac. I think he won a Cadillac.
Whoa.
Yeah, he had a Camaro, which you can see in the car. It's the car that Roger Lodge drives, and Roger Lodge actually scratched the car, which Jim Wynorski was pissed at, which I don't know why. He was winning a new car. And then he wound up with a Cadillac for a couple of years.
It's funny you mentioned, you are absolutely right, though, watching this film. And Ian, I think you said it best with Tracy Lords, with everything going on and the stigma from her early career. You watch her in this movie, though, and you're like, you're acting a hell of a lot better than anything this movie really deserves, because she's putting forth the effort. You can tell there's effort behind it. She's hitting all the right marks in that, where everybody else kind of just sees like, it's just a 10-day shoot with Wynorski. She's like, no, this is my legit role. And I think it works well, because everybody else is not taking it seriously. So, or seems to be, but
I kept thinking, because we talked about Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers last week, and that film was very much in my mind while I was watching this, because I think that's a much stronger film. But I was thinking, because I remember last week I was complaining that I like Linnea, I like the idea of Linnea Quigley, I just don't quite dig it when she actually opens her mouth. I think if I think if Tracy Lords had been in the Linnea Quigley part in Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, that would have been great.
Oh my God.
Wow. Now you just made a whole new movie.
Yeah.
I love Linnea, but that's interesting to think about. Yeah.
that would be an interesting swap in the roles. Absolutely.
No, but Tracy, I realized that, okay, I am going to go into acting, actual, regular legit acting. And I think that, have all of her roles been great? No, but I think that she really blossomed as an actress. And then you'd see her, in the next few years, you'd see her in like Cry Baby and like all these other things. And I mean, she has a presence, beyond her physicality, which is, of course, how a lot of her notoriety, came. But she has a presence beyond that has kept her going for decades and decades after the fact. She's still going strong.
Yeah, she is. Absolutely. And, she done just about everything, music, production. I mean, she's really run the gambit as far as what she's been able to do and been successful at. And in here, yeah, it's her first acting role, but in all honesty, for a film with this budget and the type of film it is, there's most of these scenes you wouldn't have thought that this was her first time doing, a legit role like this. She seemed quite comfortable in front of the camera, and she was acting. Her lines weren't just, "Oh, look at me," like some of the other actresses. No offense to them, but the prostitutes that our vampire eventually picks up, I'm like, wow.
There's a lot. It's a Jim Wynorski film. There's a lot of bimbo roles.
Yeah,
and the funny thing is if you ever listen to him talk, and he's always talking about these broads and these chicks and stuff, and he's got like this old way of talking. But if you ever listen to him talk about the individual people, he talks so glowingly and respectfully about, and they're doing this now, and she's a doctor, and da-da-da-da-da. But oh yeah, we got her because they had the good cans out. So I mean, there's definitely a duality going on.
Well, it's weird because this movie is definitely a product of its time. It's got that kind of almost like a Skinamax vibe to it. With all the gratuitous nudity and all that, which I'm not usually opposed to, and I could easily imagine myself as a 12-year-old, or I guess I would have been 11 back in '88, sneaking downstairs to watch this.
Yeah.
But
I'm going right back there. I'm sorry.
Well,
sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
No. But the thing is, like, watching it now and watching what she does with this part, when you get to the scene, the toweling off scene, it's so gratuitous because it lasts for several, like, no one in the history of getting out of showers has ever taken that long to dry off.
Especially not in high heels.
Oh my God. Who's completely unaware that she's in front of a mirror and just had the butler come in and drop off the food and have a full conversation with. Yeah, the whole scene screams. I mean, it does follow the Corman's rules of film, like the first 5 minutes or so, you got to have a death, breasts, and something.
Yeah, I think he said like every 6 to 8 minutes you have to have like sex or violence, right? Like a car explosion, a murder, a nudity, something like that. And hey, you know what? He's right. That's what exploitation films is all about, and that's why you see so many exploitation films today where you're like, well, this seems very standard. I'm going to forget about this. No kid who did rent this when they were 11 or 12 years old. I was 13. Forgot this movie, especially in the halcyon days before the internet, before you could get stuff. But if you were a fan of like cheesy movies, you kind of grew to I'm preaching to the choir here, I know, hosts and guests and audience, but I mean, once you started, you might have like gone when you were a kid to these movies for like the sex and the violence, but then you kind of grew to like the rhythm of them and like the feel of them. and like the kitsch and the campiness. And so that's why I've got, X-rated Jim Wynorski movies. I've got G-rated Jim Wynorski movies. I mean, I just
he runs the gambit.
Yeah,
he does definitely run the gambit. He's kind of like, he's like kind of like Fred Olen Ray in that respect. He just whatever they're gonna make.
They were like
yeah. But what did you think of our villain and what Scott said about the beat of this film, because it does actually have a beat to it actually with the script,
I suppose.
But what do you think of our villain?
It's interesting. I mean, it's I like that this is the first of the space vampire movies we're talking about because it's an unconventional type of a space vampire movie. I've not seen the original version from '66, but I did like the idea of this alien coming down. He's got this suitcase that he hooks up and he puts the thing on the girl's neck, and that like kind of pumps the blood out because he's like sending it back home to be processed or whatever he's using on his home planet. It's very Phantasm. I would love to know if Don Coscarelli referenced this movie or had any idea about it. Well, because the original, I'm assuming it's kind of the same premise, but there's a scene where Mr. Johnson is in his study and he opens up a portal to talk to basically the Big Lebowski. ZZ Top meets the Big Lebowski, the conduit to his homeworld. That reminded me something of straight up out of Phantasm. You got like these weird columns kind of going back into this portal, and there's like they're touching the side with this like metal thing. It was very Phantasm. So I like the kind of science fiction-y aspects of this. I wish they'd explored it more. I understand that's not the kind of movie we're dealing with, but that's sort of the frustrating thing is like they've got all these cool ideas, these cool concepts, the kitsch, Tracy Lord's wonderful performance, but then it all boils down to a dumb chase through the woods and a weird giallo murder scene and stuff that's ripped off from other movies.
Well, I mean, he only had 12 days, so
that is not my responsibility. It's his to entertain and mine to be entertained. That's the rules.
That's true. I dug the villain in this, though. I mean, it was a little different, but he plays it his own way as well. I'm like, he has character yet not, played by Arthur Roberts, as this monotone type of vampire, but occasionally he shows a little bit of emotion, like when the stripogram girl woman shows up because she came to the wrong house, and he's like, come to my cellar. It's like, although that was the prostitutes. He was like, oh, you could come to my cellar.
Well, the stripogram was funny because she shows up. He's like, what are you doing here? And she completely, gets naked and everything. And he's like, you've got the wrong address. And she's like, this isn't like 1632 North Elm. He's like, no, this is 1632 South. And she's like, damn it, that's the second time this week.
Like, imagine, you gotta imagine, I can't imagine she's getting many complaints about it.
No.
But it's like, tell for one thing, probably not the person you're looking for. For another thing, can I just put this out there? Weird birthday greeting for your mom to send.
Yeah.
For another.
Thanks, Mom.
Going back to the villain. I mean, I hesitate to think of him as a villain. He's almost he is in the fact that he's killing people and all that, but he's doing it to essentially save his people in this weird interdimensional war that's going on back home. I did like the kitsch of when he's talking to, I think he's talking to his assistant or something, and he's like, you having dinner in, and he says, I will be dining, and then there's like crazy organ music and it like zooms in on his face. Out.
Yeah, I know. I got that in my notes. I actually had that in my notes that they do this cheesy little dining. ouch.
Yeah, he's cool. I like the glowing eyes, the weird light tornado or whatever that knocks the people over.
That he sucks their souls. He's sucking their soul or something.
But it's confusing because that's what I thought at first. But then, like later on, when Jeremy, the poor house assistant, when he gets it, that was kind of a surprise. I thought for sure they're going to get rid of that lame cop boyfriend and have Nadine end up with Jeremy.
That would have been better.
Yeah, it's totally a Ducky Blaine situation. But Jeremy just seems to kind of get like knocked over or something. Yeah, very selective powers.
There's a continuity error, and Jim does say it's a continuity error. But when she's running back through the house, Jeremy's body has mysteriously disappeared.
Yeah.
So you could always think like, well, maybe he shook it off.
It's interesting that you bring up the Jeremy character. I found the butler character again. It is, but it isn't your standard like tropish things, because you've got the Jeremy character who's this ex-con, and he's been throwing out the one-liners to Tracy's character, to her nurse. But she's throwing the barbs right back. But at some point to Nadine, they kind of start fighting an alliance to where it tapers. The relationship does not go where you think it's going to go. You think it's just going to, like, at some point he's going to do something very not nice, and she's just, going to be whatever. And then, the guy takes his glasses off and then aces Jeremy. But no, they actually team up and start wondering about their employer. And you watch Jeremy's character actually changes in this film, which I'm watching this going, I didn't expect that from Jeremy's character when they're sitting at the kitchen and she's like, have you thought about this with Johnson? And all of a sudden he's like, no, you're right. This is weird. It's like, I don't mind the money, but holy shit, what the hell is going on in this house?
Yeah, I liked it because it's very much the familiar character in the vampire lore. Whether you're talking about the going back to like Fright Night to even Once Bitten with Cleavon Little, but it's cool because he just kind of shows up. He's just in the movie, answering the door to this vampire guy. And then you find out his origin story. It's like he's been working for him for like a week or two since he showed up. He was breaking into the guy's house, and all of a sudden there's this dude there, and he kind of offers him a job. It's sort of an endearing. That's when you start to get a sense of him. He's not just an evil agent from this other dimension that was summoned to be a murderous henchman. He's a regular person with a past and not much of a future. But yeah, again, this is, I want to see this movie remade again. And as silly as the idea of space vampires is, I think you could make a legit like sci-fi horror thriller with all of this premise in there and have it be like a legit thing.
I think Shout has the rights now. So maybe if they decide to start doing some of their productions, because they remade this again.
Yeah, was it 95? I think.
Yeah, Michael York played the alien. It was okay. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. That really was a movie that it kind of felt like, okay, they did this because they had a couple weeks. But this one's more fun. I personally think.
I just want to go back to the doctor, the main doctor who gets kind of mind controlled.
Yes.
His name, the actor's name is Ace Mask.
Yes.
Beautiful. Mwah.
who plays Dr. Rochelle, who shows up in 2 other Wynorski films.
The character?
Yes.
The name, a Return to Swamps Thing and Ghoulies 4.
Does he survive?
I don't know. I don't remember offhand.
I think that it's kind of like let's bring him back and we'll play him a little bit differently. But I mean, he is supposed to be the same character, but it's not like he was. I mean, no one at this time was really thinking about like an extended universe or anything like that. It was just like, let's just bring him on board. It's all kind of a family. Because I mean, if you look at these movies, Corman used to be this way when he was directing. Wynorski was always this way. They kind of developed this ensemble of people who kept working for them again and again and again. Even the guy who plays Jeremy, he retired from acting, went into timeshares, but except for the films of Jim Wynorski, who was his friends, who he just decided to like, yeah, I'll show up in your movie. 20 years. Yeah.
Oh. Well, talking about this, how this villain is not necessarily a villain, it reminded me of another film that we talked about, Mark, Brother from Another Planet.
Yeah.
It kind of has that feel to it in some cases, which contributes to the problem of the tone being all over the place. But that's the thing, is like this movie has all these different tones and none of them work together, but the way in which they're executed fits perfectly for the tone they're going for within that span of 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, the film is up and down in tone, but those little segments, it works. You get these little scenes that work. Just don't think of the whole project as a whole, and yeah, you may enjoy it better. It's an odd film, but it's, again, if you went to someone and said, hey, you want to watch a movie that was shot in 11.5 days by Jim Wynorski for $350,000, it'll be like, okay. But you watch this film and there's just something like about it that it hits just the right tone. I mean, yeah, you open it, they don't set a time period too for this, because even though the car is from the 50s and you had the makeout scene in the beginning in the 50s, of course the rest of the traffic and shit are all more 80s, but they never say when it's taking place either, though. So the 50s is almost like a throwback nod to the original film, yet it's not necessarily taking place in that time.
Well, it is taking place at least in the 1980s, because one of the most offensive lines I have heard in any film comes from this movie. I don't remember the exact quote, but it's when Nadine, I think she's in bed with her cop boyfriend, and they're joking about television.
Yes.
And she says that Chips was a better show than The Twilight Zone.
Yes.
Chips.
What do you want from her? She was 18 when she made it.
She's just reading the lines, Ian.
But she's nurse.
Just reading the script. It's what was in the script.
She's a nurse. She's supposed to believe the science, and the science dictates the Twilight Zone is the superior show.
Oh, Chips sucks. Yeah, and Twilight Zone. I like cheesy old shows, but Chips sucks, and Twilight Zone is amazing. Yeah, I totally agree.
It is. Twilight Zone.
Now, maybe she was talking about the 1987 Twilight Zone.
Ooh.
But I still have an affection for that.
Well, yeah, if it was actually supposed to be modern time, then she could be talking about the 87 Twilight Zone. Which the best episodes were when they were remaking the old ones. But
that is another interesting thing about the movie, is that, and I don't want to recall her previous films too much when I talk about this. She doesn't want to talk about it, and I think that's fair. But the weird thing is that nobody knew how old she was is the official story. And apparently in a lot of the old movies, and you can find, of course, non-sexual clips and stuff, which definitely don't look up the sexy ones. And you can see, like, well, wait, she's not playing a teenager. She's playing an adult in these movies. And if you look here, you think, okay, well, this is her first official movie, but she's not playing any plucky high school student that's thwarting an alien invasion. She's playing somebody who would be at least in their early 20s.
Yeah.
And is carrying it very well, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know about, I had to keep reminding myself, usually when she was in skimpy clothing, I was like, oh geez, because I'm like, remember, she was only 18 when she made this, because she presents herself even though it's very campy and it's very over the top, and how the lines are delivered are very vampish sometimes even. it's very much she very much is an adult person, a very much an adult character, and she pulls it off perfectly. Well, not perfectly, but very well.
Well, I mean, you buy in the fact she's a nurse. I mean, there's when you were introduced to her character, you buy in. She's not someone playing. I mean, she's a nurse. You don't see anything but that. It's not a high school kid who's an intern or whatnot.
Right? No.
You know, that's one thing. Is at least all these characters are who they are, and we get we do get a number of pop culture references as well. I mean, you get a Tabby and Jim Baker line in here as well as the Chips and the and the Twilight Zone reference, which I think
still around. So
yeah. Well, I think she definitely meant the I think she definitely meant the 87 Twilight Zone for sure. At one point in this film, we do have another nurse who works with the doctor. Look for Kelly Maroney.
Yay!
Yes, that was a welcome surprise.
Where she shows up in here because we have a female alien from Davana, I think the name of the planet is, or something along that lines, who shows up because things are getting worse on the alien's planet. We find out his significant other is passed away, the nukes and such, and she needs blood. So he's like, oh, I know a place where we could get blood. And unfortunately, he picks the wrong blood and he gives her rabid blood, which is just in this bottle in the fridge.
Well, that's where you got to keep it,
Well, yeah, but it's labeled on the bottom of the glass. It says rabid blood. But
the person who labeled the bottle had rabies, so that's
They did not follow proper ISO 13486 processes for labeling that bottle. I can guarantee you that. Sorry, I came from a place where we packaged medical devices. So, in any case,
I always talk shop.
We go.
Fine.
Look at me kill the room with a medical technical joke. But I loved the segment with her showing up too, and I think her character shows up at the right time. It is Davana, played by Rebecca Pearl.
Her face, not her voice.
Not her voice. No, her voice was Michelle Bauer, was it?
No,
the scream was
there was a scream when the stripogram goes through the gate.
Right.
Is Michelle Bauer's scream.
Right.
The voice is by Angel Tompkins.
Oh, okay.
Who was like an actor who you could see like in a lot of 70s exploitation films, a lot of 80s TV.
Well, so, the dub is done well, at least on it, but I mean,
they tried to get her back. I guess they couldn't get her back with the voice or something, and something like that, something weird like that. I don't know.
Well, still, it's an interesting character because they keep this consistency with their characters, and she gets to be a badass at one point. You've got a gang because here, go to, I forgot where he sent her, like the movie theater or something, and the gang confronts her.
And that looked like a cut scene from the Toxic Avenger, that cartoonish gang, and ganging up on this lady, and she's got all these weird bubble things coming out of her face, and she's rabid. This movie is front loaded with a lot of cool stuff, but like at the end when it's all just spaghetti against the wall, I couldn't tell what I was supposed to pay attention to or care about. Although I did like this is I guess the one part where Tracy Lord's acting really kind of fell apart for me, but I kind of gotta blame the script, is the final line when they're talking about the alien, and she said, "He was just a foreign thing that came here to destroy us. Thank God he tried too hard."
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
No.
You think about that sentence and no way you put it, you're like, okay, no, that one just doesn't.
And that's when Roger Rogers backs off like, oh boy, you're only 18, aren't you? You're not that bright.
I think it's more of because, like we mentioned before, you had the dining and the dun dun dun. out type of thing and some other throwbacks to the 50s sci-fi. I think what he was trying to go for is, I mean, we've all watched campy, cheesy sci-fi films from the 50s. I love them, but they usually ended with some kind of morale type sentence or exposition or something with the hero going, you know, they came here to conquer us, but we taught them the lesson. They won't forget and they won't be back. Or will they? Dun, 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 you know, or some kind of line. So I think that's what he was going for.
Yeah.
It just whiffs the landing.
It's been a long time since I've seen the 50s version. It's been like about 10 years. But if I recall, and I'd say it's pretty obvious when you see the movie, is that they didn't really do that many changes to the script. It was just mostly updating things like the hookers and stuff like that. Was like, well, I mean, be happy. The hookers, I think, in the original was a Chinese laundromat or something.
Ooh,
so yeah. So no, hookers are fine. Hookers are evergreen. So I mean, but like a lot of the stuff, you know, and the monotone alien voice and to the moralizing stuff, all of this is right out of the 50s, and I think it comes from not just wanting to do the movie quickly, although there was certainly that, but I think it also comes from a desire to kind of recapture a lot of the kitsch of these 50s sci-fi movies, along with a little 80s sex and violence exploitation type thing going on there. And I think that they tried to blend those two, and that's why we get 80s, everything in the 50s was coming back in the 80s, so why not? We had Reagan as president,
And I don't have the person's name, unfortunately, because Facebook doesn't allow it unless you go to StreamYard's website and allow them access. But Facebook users sent us lots of hearts. So, but one's draining. One's draining slowly. We'll send that off to Devana. So, but thank you for tuning in, everybody. But yeah, you almost feel like Wodorowsky also was just kind of trying to capture that 50s kitsch. I mean, especially that opening scene, with the couple making out in the back. I mean, if it wasn't for the wardrobe and some of the excessive nudity, you'd almost
or have the ease in which that wardrobe comes off.
I just like when he reaches in to choke the guy. It's got this kind of like a weird, crinkly, moist thing going on. Where
they do that. He does that with every person he chokes, because he chokes like 3 different people.
Right, but it's the sound effect. I don't know what is going on in these people's necks, but it's like squishy and crinkly at the same time.
Well, he's crushing their trach. He's crushing the trachea. That's what it sounds like when you crush. Never mind. Anyway.
I expect to see a bit more like blood or moisture. I guess 1988, we're also talking about the era of Roadhouse. So, they need to work on their throat game in this movie. And that is not another reference to Tracy Lords, folks. I'm sorry.
No. Wow. Woo, hitting all the marks. Speaking of her character, though, one of the things I found interesting with the chase that they had, which I know it's small. Okay, folks, you know me, lakes out of puddles. But what I appreciated with her character is she's getting chased because she comes home after her date. She's got heels. She's got the nice dress on. She's getting chased. Very early in the chase, she does one thing that, in all honesty, in many of these movies, you don't see the female character do. She took off her heels and bolted. I know it's small. I know it's something small, but at the same time, I really appreciated that just little thing. She got out onto the porch. She looked at what she had to run across, and she kicked off the fucking heels and just went.
It's one of those things that you always think like, thank you.
Bryce Dallas Howard did not learn that lesson 20 years later in that Jurassic World movie. She was running around in heels.
She was running.
If only she had watched Not of This Earth.
Well, there you go. She probably should have watched Not of This Earth. So,
I do want to mention there's a weird like mobbed up vacuum cleaner salesman that gets taken down by the vampire, and then later it's a lovely callback because I laughed out loud when this happened. When the stripper comes to the door, Mr. Johnson says, "You are here to sell me a vacuum cleaner?"
Once she already has everything out and everything.
Yeah, she has everything out and everything, and he's like, "Oh, did you want to sell me a vacuum cleaner?" I laughed at that too.
I've seen this movie like a dozen times, and I laugh out loud every time when I see.
It's the way he delivers it too. We talk about monotone, but there's just a little. At times when he does let a little emotion work in, it works well, and there it did. He adds just a little inflection on it, like. You want to sell me a vacuum cleaner? It's just like that. That's not.
Wynorski really is good at putting a lot of character actors in his movies, and he's very big on character actors. And you could even make the argument that the movie stars Tracy Lords and a bunch of character actors.
Yeah,
because that's basically what they are. They have this one shtick, and they just kind of play it through, but they are all in on it, and they all kind of know just the right level to be, and I think that I'm trying to think, is it Arthur Roberts? Is that his name? Something like that? Yeah. Did a fine job as the alien creature. I think he did better than Paul Burch in the original.
Actually, funny you mentioned that, because I want to bring up a character who I forgot, and it's just a random character, but I want to see more of, I believe she was Agnes, played by Monique Gabriel. She's the woman on the bench.
Yes.
There's the doctor's waiting for the cop. It's like you missed a scene in here. All of a sudden, the cop's sitting on the doctor's sitting on a bench, and you have this woman sitting next to him, which appearing to be either she's just, she's slightly off kilter. She's, a lot, but still, she's a wonderful character. And
she was crazy and even had a butterfly net. I mean,
but at the same time, again, you're mentioning character. There's just this character, and I loved her. I thought she was awesome.
It's the type of part that she really wanted to do more of, because she didn't want to be like, in the words of her and Jim, sex pot roles, which is what she was known for. But I mean, she was and she always looked, and she always put a good amount of comedy. If you look at Deathstalker 2, which I thought she was fantastic in, Evil Tunes, she puts tries to put a lot of comedy in. But then you look at like a movie like, say, like a Bachelor Party.
Yeah.
And she's just there to be the sex pot,
Yeah.
And she wanted to do more stuff and here's something where she's made up so that like people on the set didn't even know it was her at first. And she gets to do this part. And I wish she would have been able to stick in the business for longer and do more of the roles that she wanted to do, because boy, what an amazingly charismatic actress Monique Gabriel was. She was just fantastic. And so it's a lovely little cameo.
It is, but I mean, it was great because it's a random character, and you're just like, but I loved the character, because she was just totally wet. I mean, the way she was giving her dialogue and everything, I'm like, she's kind of like crazy cat lady on the bench.
Yeah, I have no context for this actress, but it's cool that she got this part. This was at a point in the movie where, again, I'm like, well, why not?
See, that's what I love about movies like this. If they load the front end of that, they really sell it. So by the time you get 2/3 of the way into the film, something weird or something just happened. You're just like, okay.
That's the great thing. And like, some of the people who are really great at exploitation can do this. And I don't even always know if they do it, but they do. And Wynorski was one of these people, well, at least when he was working on these types of movies and not the ones that he had to do like in 2 days, which he has done.
Yeah.
When is that it's such a basic movie and you look at this and like, well, there's not much to this, is it? But then if you really look and you look within the scenes, you're like, oh, that's a weird thing that character to do. And hey, that's a weird little set piece to have there. And here, there's like all these little details in it. Mm-hmm. So that when you go back over it and you're like, this is just silly. And you see like these little tiny details that all kind of make up this wacky little piece of art that this is. And I think that it's all the little details that that when you take them together really make something that's, at least for me, very endearing,
Well, I mean, you guys are really selling me on this thing. Is this movie out on Blu-ray, or did it get kind of like an official release with like extras and stuff? Because I would love to hear like more about the making of this thing.
It has a beautiful. Well, I don't know. Did it ever get the Blu-ray release? Because I don't think
I got the DVD. I don't know if
the DVD is wonderful though. The DVD has 2 audio commentaries on it, and one of them is one of my favorite audio commentaries ever, and it's between Wynorski and Tracy Lords.
Oh. Okay.
And this is actually, it's a funny thing about that DVD. I saved up. I was working at Blockbuster Video. I had no money coming in. I was saving up for about a year for a new TV. And I finally saved up enough for a new TV. And I spent $500 on the TV. And I made sure that the first film I watched was the DVD, then just released, of Not of This Earth. Because I said, if I spent $500 on the TV, I want to watch a movie that costs just as much.
That is a fitting tribute.
Yeah.
The DVD is on Amazon. You could get it new for $13.99 and does have the commentary on it.
It's got lots of really great stuff.
It does not have a Blu-ray. It does not have a Blu-ray release.
I wonder why they didn't
yet.
Well, here's the thing though. We're going to make that Blu-ray release happen because I'm going to buy the movie on DVD in the next couple of weeks. And then about 3 days after I purchase it,
it'll come out
on Blu-ray. Yeah. That has happened to me many, many times.
It's happened to me too. I'll be happy for you to take the bullet this time. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I've had that happen as well. Yeah. I just have look at that with all the extra features. I've got just the disc and a trailer, and this has like 3 hours of it. That's lovely.
Oh, so what you have the old Concord DVD? Yeah.
Yeah.
The one that one has the commentary by Jim and Jeremy there, Lenny, the actor Lenny.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did he have that weird, like, Brooklyn accent or whatever he was doing? That's his actual voice?
Yeah, he actually says, hey, Jim, well, he hires me for these parts. It's really great, And
I love that, because I couldn't tell if that was, like, a bit or if that's just the guy being himself.
He's really got that voice, but he's a smarter guy. At one point, the other commentary is better, but although I do remember at one point, you just hear this, boom, boom. Hey, Lenny, stop kicking the fucking boards. Oh, sorry, boss. It's just a random thing that happens like midway through the commentary. I'm like, where the hell did that come from?
So, we'll wrap it up. It's not a deep film, but it's a fascinating. I find this film fascinating, not just the film, but the story around it, and I think, and I don't want to speak for you guys at each in turn, but I think for all of the really bad cookie cutter, like just those films that truly are not entertaining, they're just poorly done or whatnot, we watch those because then you run across a film like this that you're like, oh, and it gives you hope that there's more out there like that. And you start searching them, because for when people wonder, well, how can you watch B movies? It's movies like this why we watch B movies or the camp films, because amongst all the surface, the superficial, immediate knee-jerk reaction to a film like this, going, oh, Tracy Lords, oh, you got naked, oh, it's Jim Wynorski, oh, if you actually watch it, a lot of times, and not all, a lot of times it'll be what you expected, but then sometimes you're just going to get those things where it's just like, this is not what I expected. I mean, Ian, what would you say with like campy films like this, and why people watch them? Would you say this is one of those ones that why you watch films like this?
Well, I mean, it's interesting you ask that question because I don't have a whole lot of experience watching movies like this.
We're corrupting you slowly.
No, but I mean, like Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers last week, this movie, you know, a lot of these things are films that I was either unaware of or I just thought they looked cheap and stupid, or, you know, I was watching other kinds of movies back in, you know, my corrupted youth. So it is really kind of fun to discover this kind of, it's not even really a subgenre, but this category of films. I can understand why people appreciate them. I started this conversation off kind of, I think, being a little down on the movie, but, you know, talking to you guys has really helped me appreciate, like you say, Mark, the stuff going on around it. I think it is one of those things where it's kind of like my journey with slow cinema. Mm-hmm. When I would watch those movies years ago, I had no context. I had no idea why I was supposed to care. These things are slow, they're boring, they're dull. But then once you get immersed in the language of the subculture, which I think you guys have an appreciation for these kinds of films, you can see what's going on. You understand the actors and the performers, and, you know, what was going on in the era at the time. It helps inform it. It doesn't make the movies better, but it makes them more interesting. Like, I could now go back and watch Not of This Earth again. I don't know if I could watch it just as a movie, because there are parts of it where, like, yeah, this chase through the woods. Yeah, I appreciate she took off her shoes, but then I got to watch this for 5 minutes. I'm like, it's just fucking darkness and trees. I do want to learn more about what was going on in, like, each frame of this, like going back and watching Battle Beyond the Stars and, you know, rewatching Humanoids of the Deep to really get all these references from the montage and the opening. And also just trying to figure out why the hell include that. Like, we never really talked about that. What's the point of having that in the movie aside from, hey, it's free footage? Did they, you know, you got to make a movie in 12 days. I understand, but any filmmaker worth their salt, I would imagine, wants the audience to be able to understand what they're looking at, or do they just count on the fact, hey, you're going to see Tracy Lords getting out of the shower for 3 minutes. You're not going to care about what we have in the opening 5.
It might be something like that. I mean, I think it's more just budgetary reasons, or maybe it's a nod to your audience. I mean, it is Warnorski, you know, most of these directors, and Scotty D, you are the master. I am just the Padawan.
Keep saying that.
But many of these, I think many people get the wrong impression that these filmmakers 90% of the time are not aware of what type of film they're making, and they're exactly aware of who their audience is and what type of film they're making. They know they're not making Avatar or whatever, you know, they're not making the next, you know, Bicycle Thief, whatever the fuck. They're making a film in 11 days for $350,000 so I can win a bet. He knows what film he's making, and he knows he has a fan base at this time, and Corman's got a fan base, so he's using footage from previous Corman films because this is a remake of a Corman film. So it's kind of like a nod to the audience, because we'll pick up, if you're a fan, you're going to go, oh, that's, you know, and if you're new to this, you just think, okay, this is just kind of a weird movie because it's a sci-fi movie. They're just showing sci-fi weird footage because, you know, I mean,
yeah, I mean, they could have probably cut out the 2 scenes they spliced in.
Yeah, those, yeah,
from Humanoids. They did that basically to get to feature length.
Right.
He said that when they ran it, it was like 70 some minutes, and he had to throw some stuff in. The other stuff, I think, was just to add budget to this. I mean, my gosh, Corman used that Galaxy of Terror and Battle Beyond the Stars footage. Like, you guys money's worth. But, like, you know, you kind of get to know that, like, when you rent I think that you're always going to see that. And you always see the reviews online, especially if you go like to a main aggregator site like IMDb or something like that. It's like, I rented this and it was cheap. Like, well, yeah, it's cheap. And, you know, you got to kind of take in mind that, you know, Dominic Toretto can like jump a car and like go from mountaintop to mountaintop, and no problem. This movie, you're lucky. You're going to see like, you're going to see one car jump off a cliff, and then you're going to see that car turn into another car as they use the stock footage from the next shot, and then turn back into the other car when they come back down. It's you kind of, and I'm not sure if this is where you're going, but I want to go. But like going back to like the idea of when people are young and discovering these movies like this. When we would find these movies, and why would we keep going back to these B movies? People thought I was very strange because I was known as the one. He's like obsessed with these low budget movies. Everybody's like, "This is crazy. Why is it? Who else do you know that is obsessed with these low budget movies at his age?" And I went crazy for him, and I would rent maybe like 20 in a month, and maybe 10% were really good. But those 10%, and 50% were passable. Right. 50% were passable, 10% were really good. And those 10% is what kept me coming back for more. And sometimes you just see names and you decide to keep it, Right. You get to know, like, hey, certain Italian filmmakers are going to make really good like Mad Max ripoffs, I see Corman's name. Done. That's in the cart. Yes. Stuff like that. And you get to know the names, you get to know the people, and you get to know kind of the feel of what you're going to get and charm of what you're going to get in the movie. And I think that this is before the internet, so I didn't realize that there were other people, maybe not a ton, but other people kids in other small towns in the world that were also obsessed with B movies. And now we're grown up now, and now we're bitter old men who talk about who talk about how great the movies are and why this part of my body hurts.
Well, that's like we had that discussion about horror films too. It's the same thing with horror films of why we keep coming back to horror. How can you watch so much horror? It's like, well, yeah, you watch, like you said, 20 horror films in a month, 50% are okay and standard, but then you get that 10%. So you rent like 5 films one night, and all of a sudden 2 of those are really good. Well, shit, I got to go rent some more because that shows there's more. Never mind the 3 previous days were total crap. Doesn't matter. You suddenly found that gem or 2, and that sparks you, and then you just keep going. And especially with cult cinema and the camp cinema, especially you see it on the internet now, and we'll wrap it up here, but you see it on the internet now. Not only are you finding those people who like it, you're finding the people who made it, and you're finding out stories around these movies that we enjoy, which makes you appreciate them more. So you're watching a film. It's like you said, Ian, the basic story of Not of This Earth, you're watching going, the story around it, that first when we learned bits and pieces when it first came out, and now even more about it, you sit there and you're not just watching the film. You've got that history backfilling subconsciously in your brain or whatnot. And you appreciate it more because you know more about the film. And I think a lot of the camp stuff, it's why I love it, is because there's always it always seems like there's these interesting stories around these films, more so than a blockbuster film that was made. It just seems like, like this was made on a bet. Was it you look at Sorority Babes at the Slime Ball Bolorama, or a Sorority House, The Massacre. You look those types of films, and you start learning some of the history behind them. So now you're watching them, and you're like, you're not just watching the film. You've got that history there, and you feel more comfortable. And I think that helps in your appreciation of these films even more. And
I did a whole web series about this one.
You did. Absolutely did. I'm preaching to the choir here. Mediocrity, folks. It was cinema. It was Movieocrity. Sorry, not mediocrity. My apologies. Movieocrity.
It's okay.
It's been a while.
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. So I think we'll wrap it up tonight. Not of This Earth. Final thought with Not of This Earth, and would you recommend it? Scotty D, I think we know what you're going to say, but go ahead. Yeah, your final thought.
My bread and butter, so it's my thing.
Ian, what about you, sir, Mr. Rotten Tomatoes? I give you shit.
Yeah. No. Again, I would recommend it with several asterisks.
Caveats.
Yeah. I mean, it's not really a comedy. It's not really a sci-fi horror movie. It's a little bit of everything. And kind of just to piggyback on something you said, Mark, about the difference between this and like a blockbuster. I mean, this movie and movies of its kind, the few that I've seen, they felt like, successful or not, they feel like they were made by real people. Sort of in the spirit of Ed Wood and I guess Roger Corman, like we're going to go out, we're going to make a movie that people are going to, pay to see. And we're going to do it with no time and no budget. But by the end of it, we're going to have a feature film. How many people can actually say that? Right. We don't have the hundreds of millions of dollars behind, Hollywood behind it. So there's going to be stories because that's an adventure, just making these things. Mm-hmm. That's what's, that's half the fascination for me. So yeah, big recommend for this movie. I can't believe I just said that.
That makes me so happy, Ian. That warms my sick little heart to hear you say that, sir. So glad. And yeah, I recommend it as well. It's fun. Yes, caveats. It does have the product of its time, and it is an exploitation film. But with all those elements, you still look at this, and it'll surprise you. I think there'll be scenes that will surprise you a bit and might make you interested to seek out who these other actors are and maybe what they've worked on, because you can go down a bit of a rabbit hole depending on which actor you follow, and you never know what you might end up finding. So there you have it, folks. Hope you enjoyed this, our first episode for the month of Space Sucks. We will be doing Life Force this month. So now is the time where I give a license to shill to my wonderful crew members. So Scotty D, you got anything to shill, sir? Whatever you want, go. Please.
Not a hell of a lot.
You've got YouTube though. You got
the thing I've been doing most of all is I've been doing unboxing videos monthly just to keep my head in the game. I've been planning something for a while. And given how small it is, it's kind of weird that it's taken as long as it has. But in between the time that I was going to start it, we've had a pandemic, a health scare for me, and a mental break. So it slowed things down. But I'm still working on it, and I'm really interested. I'm starting to kind of get the old tingle again where I think I want to get things up and running again. But right now you can check out my YouTube channel. It's at Movieocrity, MOVIOCRITY. And you can also see movieocrity.com. There's an old web series I did, Movieocrity, where you can see all the episodes on Vimeo. YouTube axed a good number of them.
Because of boobs.
Because of boobs and other things, yes. Bogus copyright things and whatnot.
YouTube.
Yeah.
And yet I was able to watch this movie on YouTube. Go figure. Sorry.
Go figure, yeah. Exactly. The first block I got was for a public domain movie. True. Spider Baby is public domain, and I got it. I got zapped for it. They weren't going to let me put an episode up for it, and I had to fight for it. So,
my God.
But yeah, but I've got those out there. The website, It's old stuff. I've got unboxing videos that are new, but hopefully I will have a new project up and coming in the next few months. We hope.
Awesome.
I don't know.
Fingers crossed. Hopefully, cool. And I'll definitely look forward to seeing that. Scotty D, aka Baby Spice, so glad to have you back in the spoiler room, my friend. And yes, my friend Ian, the floor is yours, sir. License to shill as always.
I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. Mostly I do YouTube videos now, so you can go to YouTube and look up Kicking the Seat. I do a couple or 3 videos every week, like movie reviews, interviews, roundtables, that kind of stuff. Gonna get back into the live streaming game next week, talking about Marvel Disney's What If, even though we spent a considerable amount of time in the pre-show crapping all over Disney, we still can't stay away. We can't quit them. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And I'm here just about every week. What was that?
We're addicted. Yeah, they got us.
Yeah.
When they control like 40% of all consumable media in the world, you can't help but
they got us.
They got you.
40%, Mark. That's an awfully conservative estimate. I would have put it up somewhere like between 93 and 94. But yeah, that's my shtick.
Awesome. Yes, check out his stuff. Always great. Check out Scotty D's stuff. We got all kinds of stuff. If you're interested, folks, for the next 2 months, SMP Radio on Live 365. I'm trying it out. We're still working out some of the bugs, but head on over there if you're curious. You can tune in. You'll hear random things right now, but I've got 2 planned programs, Saturdays and Sundays. There's Sunday Scores and Saturday Cinemania. So, and there may be more stuff coming up. Not sure how long it's going to run. It can only be run by your support. Along with this, we have a Patreon page. Go check it out. Go check out those tiers. Enough of that. So, folks, thank you so much for listening. And now we'll just say a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.